The WVU Coed Murders, Who Killed Malarik and Karen? Don't just sit there in the shadows, smash that subscribe button before the darkness swallows the rest of the story. It was March 1970 in Morgantown, West Virginia, the kind of night where the Allegheny air felt heavier than usual, as if it carried secrets it had no business keeping. Two West Virginia University freshmen, Malarik and Karen Ferrell, had just left a late showing of Oliver at the local cinema. The girls laughed, their voices echoing off the empty downtown streets, boots striking against the cold pavement as they tried to hitch a ride back to campus. They never made it home. By morning, panic rippled through the quiet college town. Their dorm beds untouched, purses and belongings still inside, and no sign of the bright-eyed co-eds who'd been inseparable since the semester began. The disappearance was first whispered among students, then shouted across police radio channels. A city that had been defined by coal mines and college football was now redefined by fear. The investigation ignited immediately. Detectives canvassed the theater district, questioning ticket takers, bus drivers, and the few late-night stragglers who might have seen something. A bartender recalled two girls at the curb, waving down cars. A taxi driver swore he saw them climb into the back seat of a sedan, though his description blurred under pressure. Some said it was a blue Chevy. Others swore it was a white Pontiac. The only certainty was uncertainty. Then came the letters, handwritten, shaky, and taunting. One arrived at the local newspaper, scrawled in ink that bled through the paper. You will locate the bodies of the girls covered over with brush. Look carefully. The animals are now on the move. The message chilled investigators. Was this the confession of the killer, or a cruel prank from someone who wanted to stir the pot of hysteria? Search teams scoured the backroads and hillsides outside Morgantown, dogs barking against the sharp spring air. They pushed through thickets and creek beds, every snapped twig sounding like a clue. For weeks, nothing surfaced. But then, 2 miles south of town, deep in the woods near a rural coal access road, the search came to a halt. Hidden under brush and leaves were the skeletal remains of two young women. Dental records confirmed it, Malarik and Karen. The brutality stunned even seasoned officers, but in those first reports, few details leaked. What the police did share only raised more questions. Why had the girls been taken so far off campus? Why had the killer or killers gone to the trouble of covering the bodies with brush, almost as if they wanted them to be found later? And what about that letter? Suspects came quickly, too quickly. There was Eugene Paul Clausen, a drifter with a violent history, who later confessed but whose story changed with every retelling. There was the janitor with a disturbing fur fetish, who often lingered near the girls' dormitory, the local delivery man who once beat a woman nearly to death, and the nursing home orderly with a reputation for cruelty. Each man seemed plausible. Each man had a darkness that made Morgantown wonder, was he capable of it? Yet every time the case seemed to tighten, it unraveled. Witness statements contradicted each other. Alibis appeared, then collapsed. Evidence was sparse, fragile, some said deliberately mishandled. Whispers spread faster than facts. A wealthy family's son was being protected. A satanic cult had demanded sacrifices. The police themselves were covering up something unspeakable. The pressure mounted until one detective, exhausted and staring at the crime scene photos, muttered, "It's not that we don't have suspects, we have too many." And then, just when the town thawed. But it couldn't get darker. Investigators opened an unmarked envelope. Inside was a photograph, grainy, almost blurred, showing a man standing in the woods near the very site where Malarik and Karen had been found, his face half-shadowed, his expression unreadable. The note attached was only 5 words long. "You're looking in the wrong place." The discovery of that photograph ignited a firestorm within the investigation. Who had taken it? And why send it now, weeks after the bodies were found? Detectives pinned it on the evidence board beside the cryptic letters, trying to connect lines between faces, rumors, and timelines. Morgantown had become a city of whispers. Students no longer hitchhiked. Parents called every night, demanding their children stay indoors. And detectives found themselves chasing leads that stretched from the campus cafeteria to the darkest corners of Appalachia. One name rose to the surface, Eugene Paul Clausen, a man who drifted in and out of West Virginia, carrying with him a violent past. Arrest records revealed a predator with a taste for control and cruelty. When detectives hauled him into an interrogation room, he confessed in a monotone voice that sent shivers down the spines of the officers present. but his confession was too perfect. He described the girls' abduction, their final moments, and even claimed he had driven them into the wooded area where they were later discovered. For a brief moment, police felt relief. They had their killer. Then the cracks appeared. Clausen's details didn't match the physical evidence. He placed the girls in the wrong location. His timeline was impossible, and most damning, his story changed every time he retold it. Was he the murderer, or just a man desperate for attention, willing to claim responsibility for something he hadn't done? The case files became heavier, not lighter. Meanwhile, suspicion spilled into the local community. There was Fred Zane, the ambitious young crime lab technician whose results seemed almost too convenient. There was Red Snyder, a bar bouncer with a violent streak and a chilling laugh that locals said didn't sound human. And then the janitor, who owned boxes of women's hair clippings and fur scraps hidden. The lead investigator stared at the photo late into the night, a cigarette burning down to ash between his fingers. He told his partner quietly, "We're chasing ghosts, and if we're not careful, one of us will be next." And then, in the middle of that endless night, the phone rang. A chilling tip had just come in. "You're looking at the wrong men. The one you want is closer than you think. He's sitting at your table." The phone call sent shockwaves through the task force. "He's sitting at your table." The words replayed in their heads like a curse. Was the killer among them? Was it a leak inside the department, or just another cruel trick designed to tear the investigation apart? Detectives doubled down, reviewing every name they had pinned to the evidence board. The janitor, the bouncer, the orderly, the drifter Clausen. But each one, when cornered, left the investigators with nothing conclusive. The case was slipping through their fingers, and Morgantown could feel it. Public pressure reached a breaking point. Students staged protests demanding answers. Families of the victims begged for closure, and the media painted the police as either incompetent or complicit. Under the weight of scrutiny, cracks began to form. Some detectives turned on each other. Rumors spread that evidence had been destroyed, that leads were ignored because they pointed to someone untouchable. And that's when a new theory emerged. What if this wasn't the work of a lone madman, but a cover-up? There were whispers about a wealthy Morgantown family, one with ties to the university, to politics, and to law enforcement itself. A son known for his temper, his late-night escapades, and his ability to make problems disappear. Some swore the case was silenced to protect him. Others dismissed it as conspiracy, but the timing, the missing evidence, and the sudden quieting of leads made the town wonder, had the truth been buried alongside the girls? Then came the most disturbing revelation of all. An internal review years later revealed that Fred Zane, the young crime lab technician once celebrated for his airtight results, had falsified evidence in multiple cases. He had built careers, secured convictions, and destroyed lives with lies dressed up as science. If Zane had touched the Coed Murders investigation in he had then, how much of the evidence was even real? The tragedy deepened. Malarik and Karen's families were forced to live in a limbo of doubt, never knowing if the men accused were guilty or if the real killer had walked free. The letters stopped, the phone calls ended, and the photograph of the shadowed man remained the single most haunting clue, a face frozen in time, daring investigators to identify him. Decades passed. Morgantown grew, the university thrived, but the story of the two co-eds never left. It lingered in the halls of dorms, whispered at the back of classrooms, retold at bars whenever a stranger walked in. For every new generation of students, the question remained the same. Who killed Malarik and Karen? The truth, as of today, is still hidden. Some believe Clausen was guilty, his shifting story the mark of a guilty conscience. Others argue the real killer was never even questioned, shielded by power or obscured by corruption. And there are those who think the murderer walked away grinning, leaving behind just enough clues to keep Morgantown guessing forever. 50 years later, the woods south of town remain quiet. But if you stand there at dusk, some locals will tell you they still feel watched. The rustle of brush in the wind, the creak of branches overhead, it all feels like a reminder that the case was never solved, that justice was never served. The WVU Coed Murders are not just a cold case. They are a wound in the town's memory, a story that refuses to close. Because in the end, the question that haunts everyone is not just who killed Malarik and Karen, it's why. And until that answer is found, Morgantown will never truly sleep. If this story left you questioning everything, imagine what's coming next. Hit subscribe, because the darkest cases are the ones no one dares to talk about.